just said, this is your big chance. I'm John Powers, founder of the Alliance for Sustainable Colorado. Welcome to day 4 of the Big Tent. It's sad for all of us in the final day. The Alliance for Sustainable Colorado has been created to bring together nonprofits, business, government, and academia to work on issues of sustainability. This next panel is very near and dear to the ideas of sustainability. If we don't give women the right to control their reproductive choices, if we don't give women good education, good job potential, we will never get control of human overpopulation. This is absolutely, fundamentally a sustainability issue. And it's our privilege this morning to have this panel speak on reproductive choice and the access to contraception, and sex education, all these things that are vital to sustainability. I'd like to introduce Crystal Klinkenbeard. She's the Director of Communications for the No on 48 campaign.
Thank you all for being here today, and thanks so much to those of you who are watching from home. It's my real pleasure today to introduce this panel. My name is Crystal Klinkenbeard, and I'm the Director of Communications for the No on 48 campaign. I've been involved in reproductive health care access now for about 14 years, and those of you who are from Colorado know that we have faced more than our share of ballot initiatives in this state. However, this year, this time is unique. A narrow minority with an extreme political agenda who have been chipping away at reproductive health care over the years have now put away their chisels and come out with their bulldozers. So let me introduce our panel. The question that this panel asks is, have they gone too far? And we'll share the perspective of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, NARAL Pro-Choice America, a Colorado OBGYN, and an in vitro fertilization expert based in Colorado. My panel has joined me. Thank you. The first person who's going to visit with us today is Cecile Richards. Cecile Richards is president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America and the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Over the course of her career, she's become a nationally recognized progressive leader and a fierce advocate for reproductive health and rights. Ms. Richards leads a federation of more than 100 Planned Parenthood affiliates and more than 860 health centers nationwide, providing high-quality family planning and reproductive health care services, education, and information to millions of women, men, and young people each year. Before joining Planned Parenthood, Ms. Richards served as Deputy Chief of Staff for Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi and played a key role in her election as Democratic leader in the House of Representatives. Cecile has a long history of organizing in support of reproductive freedom and social justice. In 2004, she founded and served as president of America Votes, a coalition of 42 national membership-based organizations that worked to maximize voter registration, education, and mobilization efforts at the grassroots level. Please join me in thanking Cecile for her comments today.
As was mentioned, I'm here representing Planned Parenthood and the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. We're the leading women's healthcare provider in the United States. 1 in 4 women in America come to Planned Parenthood at some point in their lifetime for healthcare. We do 97% of our work is family planning, prevention work, family planning, cancer screenings, prenatal care, midlife services, etc. And we're here because we're very concerned about Amendment 48 because it really threatens basic access to health care for women in the state of Colorado. And we're part of a coalition of more than 60 medical and healthcare and advocacy organizations, so I'm very happy to be joined by some of my partners here today. Essentially, Amendment 48 is an anti-choice amendment that puts ideology at the expense of women's health care. And it would establish full legal rights for a fertilized egg, including due process. And we'll talk a little bit on this panel about exactly what the implications of that might be. It's a very far-reaching amendment that really redefines personhood, and it is a dangerous first here in the state of Colorado. We've never had a ballot initiative that tried to redefine personhood in this way in a state. It would be extremely intrusive into women and couples' personal private lives. I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague Nancy Keenan, the president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, a leading national organization on these issues, as well as the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, the Colorado Organization for Latina Opportunity and Reproductive Rights, Americans for Cures, and the Colorado OBGYN Society, as well as the Colorado Medical Society. Trying to give you a flavor of how broad-based the opposition to this amendment is. Under Amendment 48, basically birth control could become very hard to find in the state of Colorado. It opens the door to bans on very commonly used contraception, like the pill, and the reach of the amendment doesn't stop there. It could also affect those women who are already suffering their own personal private issues, potentially triggering government investigations even into miscarriages of women. Planned Parenthood sees every day women and families who are working to plan their families, to plan to have children, and to avoid unintended pregnancies and stay safe and healthy. And those goals are challenging enough without the government intervening and trying to second-guess their every decision. I do want to say for the record that in the past, when the same anti-choice activists in the state of Colorado have put forward ballot initiatives, this broad-based coalition has been successful in defeating them, and we will be successful again this November. Again, a little bit more about this law. Under this law, even the most personal decisions a woman might make about her health care would be subject to government oversight and intervention. And in fact, doctors could be prosecuted merely for treating women's reproductive needs. So I'm very glad that we have a couple of medical providers here to talk about those implications. We should never pass a law that would make it more difficult for women to seek treatment and for doctors to actually practice medicine. The direct consequences of the law are reason enough to fight the amendment, but the purposefully vague wording in this amendment create an enormous space for definition that would allow all kinds of government interference, not only in medical care, but access to medical records and to control over prescriptions and fertility treatments as well. The main purpose of this, regardless of how it's cloaked, is to really overturn the basic right of women to choose. It would eliminate the right of women in Colorado to make decisions about their own body and health, and it would absolutely, this particular amendment would literally impact thousands of laws, from when property rights are granted to a person, to inherited rights, to who can file a lawsuit. The goal is to criminalize all abortions, making every one of them illegal, including even victims of rape and incest. And if we give fertilized eggs legal rights, having an abortion could be considered murder, and women could go to jail for making the most difficult decision and personal decision of their life. Emergency contraception for rape and incest victims would be banned, and by giving legal rights to fertilized eggs, this amendment could ban birth control options like the pill and other commonly used methods of birth controls like the IUD. Establishing rights for a fertilized egg from the moment of fertilization would also ban stem cell research, which is now being used to find cures for chronic disease and disabilities. And even in vitro fertilization could be banned, since fertilized eggs used in these processes would have full legal rights under this new law. A woman with cancer could be denied access to life-saving medical treatment because of the impact it might have on a fertilized egg. The effects of initiatives like this don't stop at the state border, and really Colorado is the test case. So I think it's really important to understand that what happens here in Colorado then becomes a model for other states and other court cases around the country as the same anti-choice activists begin to try to chip away at women's rights across the country. I think this initiative is actually at the forefront, sort of where the extreme right is going on interfering in women's reproductive health care. But this fight also stretches beyond the borders of Colorado. This same, both Planned Parenthood and NARAL, Pro-Choice America, and other medical organizations are also working to defeat another proposed ballot initiative in the state of South Dakota that would ban virtually all abortions in that state as well. That'll be on the ballot this November. I think that at the end of the day, our goal at Planned Parenthood is to make sure that women have the absolute best health care and all the options possible to protect their own health and their own fertility. Amendment 48 would be a disaster for women in this state. It would be a disaster for women all around the country. And that's why we're here to urge its defeat. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cecile. You know, Amendment 48 does invite the government, lawyers, and courts into our personal lives and private decisions. And so it's really my pleasure now to introduce Nancy Keenan, the president of NARAL Pro-Choice America. Nancy is committed to working on behalf of America's pro-choice majority. She took the reins of NARAL Pro-Choice America, pledging to protect and defend American values of freedom and privacy. A successful elected official in her native state of Montana, Nancy applied her experiences as a candidate in overseeing NARAL Pro-Choice America's political program in 2006, which helped fuel the gain of 23 pro-choice seats in the United States House and 3 in the United States Senate. NARAL Pro-Choice America also helped defeat 3 anti-choice ballot measures, including the repeal of an abortion ban in South Dakota that was designed as a direct threat to Roe v. Wade. In that year's post-election analysis, National Journal listed NARAL Pro-Choice America as one of the top 5 major political organizations and a leader among groups that mobilized their grassroots and got voters to the polls in the most competitive races. So with that, thank you, Nancy.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. It's early, and I know many of you are probably enjoying the city's activities, so we're glad that you joined us this morning. Thanks to Cecile, my colleague and friend. We work together on so many fronts across the country on so many issues, so it's great always to share the podium with Cecile. And of course our colleagues in the medical community, because here in Colorado, as Cecile mentioned, this issue will not stay within the borders of Colorado. It will indeed be a model, if you will, a testing ground here in Colorado for them to try it here and across the country. So you are at the forefront here in Colorado and the importance of defeating 48. Let me also thank the coalition, because here in Colorado it is a huge coalition of folks that are working together. That's how we make it happen. It is the partnerships that we build in states that really make the difference. No one organization, no one individual can do that. It is the partnership of all of us that work on this issue. A special shout out to NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado. They had a wonderful event last night, so I think they are enjoying their morning coffee. Let me just say, this has been a strategy. And it's a strategy that if you happen to just go take a look at the National Right to Life's website, there will be no talk about this ballot initiative. There is no talk about what's going on in South Dakota. There is no talk about what is happening in California. It's because they want it under the radar screen. They want it to be out of the public sight because they know they've overstepped and they know that they are out of touch with America, especially on an initiative like this. Now, if you happen to call the folks over at the National Right to Life and ask them what their position on birth control is, they won't answer. They will not publicly answer. So I think it behooves all of us to keep that out in front so America knows and Americans know the importance of what's happening within the Right to Life movement and how they are out of step and out of touch. There is a split within the movement, and those of you that watch how movements work, sometimes the people on the ground, the people that have been waiting since Ronald Reagan to overturn Roe versus Wade, they've been waiting, they've been told that if they vote a certain way, by golly, Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. It hasn't happened yet. But the strategy now is that people on the ground are tired of waiting for the people in Washington, and they're taking it into their own hands. And they are putting these things on the ballot. They are electing state legislators that are doing it in the state legislatures. And the third prong of this strategy is the courts. And not only the Supreme Court of the country, but it is those lower courts here in states and the federal courts. So, ballot initiatives like 48. What's happening in South Dakota? There is one sole strategy there, and that is to work it up, to get it through the local and federal courts, to eventually get to the Supreme Court so that Roe versus Wade is overturned. When I talk about multiple strategies, ballot initiative 1, legislatures the other, 550 anti-choice laws enacted since 1995. That's the testing ground. Push them through those lower courts, make sure that they can get to the Supreme Court. You probably have noticed that in the states we are seeing much more discussion around who's elected to the courts, whether it's at the state Supreme Court or who's appointed at those justices. Keep in mind that George Bush had appointed 250 federal judges at all levels. So we're stacking the deck here. We're stacking state legislatures. We're stacking, in essence, their strategy is to stack ballot initiatives, so we are constantly out there fighting those with the ultimate goal, again, overturn Roe versus Wade, and do that by stacking the federal courts and eventually the Supreme Courts. You've seen it here in Colorado this week, but there is a roadshow out there, and they never give up. And I think, again, what you see on the billboards is an overstepping, because most Americans know that government and politicians don't belong in this very personal, private decision. So what's the cause and effect? As Cecile had said, ballot initiatives like here in Colorado become the testing ground to see if it can be duplicated to other parts of the country. And if it's successful here, then it becomes the formula to try somewhere else. Now, I think when we defeated the ban in South Dakota in '06, it's back again, but when we defeated it in '06, it was Republican and independent voters in that state that so clearly understood that politicians and government don't belong in this most personal, private decision. And out here in the West, that's why, I'm very confident that we're going to win in Colorado, defeat this measure, is because people in the West understand that government should not have a say in all of their lives. And it's a little bit different once you get past Texas and past that kind of religious fundamentalism, and you get into the West, that independence to say we understand the role of government and the importance of government, but we also understand where they don't belong. Now, the other part with the Supreme Court, because if this were to pass, and we're doing everything we can in partnership with our colleagues to defeat it, but if it were to pass, then there would be a case, there would be suit filed. Then we know it would start through the court systems. Then we know that eventually it could get to this sitting Supreme Court, but not this quickly, but this Supreme Court where we have the Justices Alito, Scalia, Thomas, Roberts, and the chance that any kind of model ballot initiative like this could actually, again, threaten Roe. Let me just say that it is a partnership. It's important we defeat this here in Colorado. It's important that we defeat it in South Dakota, the total outright ban in South Dakota again. As long as they stand, we stand, and we will stand to fight for women's privacy, women's freedom, the families in this country. And I think the bottom line here is they are out of step with the American public. They have overstepped on issues like this. And I'm confident, again, that the American public, the Colorado voters are going to step to the plate and defeat this initiative. But it's going to take all of us. Thank you very much.
Amendment 48 simply goes too far. As our first two panelists have told us, it would impact literally thousands of Colorado laws and regulations. It would invite the government, lawyers, and courts into our personal lives. But sometimes when we've been doing advocacy around reproductive health care, you lose touch of the fact that this will impact real women in their everyday lives. And that's really why it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Eliza Byers, She's an obstetrician gynecologist, board certified. She currently practices in Denver. Her clinical interests are reproductive health with a focus on contraception, adolescent health, and the concerns of medically underserved women. She also serves as the legislative chair for the Colorado section of the American College of Obstetrician Gynecologists. She completed her clinical residency at Exempla St. John's Hospital in Denver, Colorado, and received her MD from Thomas Jefferson Medical School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much, Dr. Byers.
Hi, my name is Eliza Byers, and as Crystal said, I'm an OBGYN here in Denver. Amendment 48 proposes to change the Colorado Constitution to define a fertilized egg as a person. This is an extreme position and not one that is based on medical evidence or scientific research. It threatens the health care that we provide to our patients every day, and it threatens the relationship between a patient and her physician. And it lays the groundwork to criminalize the practice of medicine in areas far beyond abortion and stem cell research. First, I'd like to explain why this amendment, this definition of personhood, does not reflect current medical practice, evidence, or research. A fertilized egg is made when the male sperm joins the female egg just shortly after ovulation. While we can see a fertilized egg in a test tube with a special microscope, there is no way to detect a fertilized egg within a woman's body. It is estimated that 15% of the time, the fertilized egg naturally fails to implant within the uterus, and it is spontaneously passed without knowledge by a woman or her physician. This is one of the reasons why, for many normal couples, it can take several months to conceive a pregnancy, even if they are timing everything correctly. The concept that a fertilized egg is a person is not based on medical evidence or scientific research. We don't even have a test for it. On a typical day in my practice, I will see at least 20 women in their reproductive years. We talk about their physical and mental health. We talk about their goals in life and their reproductive plan. Amendment 48 goes far beyond banning abortion and stem cell research. It directly affects the private and personal decisions that my patients make about their future, their relationships, and their families. As hard as it is to believe, the far-reaching consequences of Amendment 48 could prevent physicians from prescribing routine birth control. For example, the pill works to prevent ovulation. That is to prevent an egg from ever being released. It also causes the lining of the uterus to thin, and that is why it is so effective for treating heavy bleeding and menstrual cramps. It is the thinning of the lining that could be viewed as a threat to the fertilized egg, as it may discourage the egg from implanting. If the pill was considered to confer a potential or theoretical risk to a fertilized egg, how would I counsel my patient who needs the pill to treat her menstrual pain so she can go to work and not get fired from her job? How would I counsel my 18-year-old patient who's starting college and wants to wait and have a family until after grad school? These are patients I see every day, planning for their futures, taking care of themselves and their families. There are even more striking examples in my everyday practice where Amendment 48 is clearly and directly detrimental to the health of my patients. I spend a lot of time caring for pregnant women, and we discuss the benefits of breastfeeding. One of the many benefits, besides those to the newborn, is that for the first 6 months after having the baby, breastfeeding offers effective contraception. Just like the pill, frequent breastfeeding prevents ovulation and makes the lining of the uterus thin. This means the fertilized egg is less likely to implant in the uterus. Incredibly, Amendment 48 could be used to criminalize breastfeeding in the same way it could be used to limit other forms of contraception and negatively impact the health of women and children in Colorado. Finally, let me give you one more example, and this is in the life-threatening situation of an ectopic or a tubal pregnancy. In a tubal pregnancy, the fertilized egg implants in the tube instead of in the uterus. As it grows, it causes bleeding and pain, and if left untreated, it could rupture and result in the death of my patient. If the fertilized egg was considered a person, then when I act to save my patient's life, I could be sued or face criminal prosecution. I am working within the medical community to let healthcare providers know about Amendment 48. I can tell you that what is most striking to physicians is that this amendment is vague, far-reaching, and most importantly, dangerous. It would force doctors to practice bad medicine, and it would inappropriately guide them to do so through the state constitution. And finally, it would criminalize physicians and nurses for practicing good, evidence-based medicine, including things we do every day to help our patients live healthier lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Byers. I think Dr. Byers did a great job of illustrating the ways that Amendment 48 would really interfere in the personal, private relationship that a woman has with her doctor. The Amendment 48 has far-reaching consequences on important life decisions that go far beyond what we might initially consider with an amendment of this type. And that's why it's my real pleasure to introduce Dr. Ruben Alvaro. He's an obstetrician gynecologist certified in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. He got his medical degree from the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, Maryland. He did his residency in OBGYN at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, performed a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility, the National Institutes of Health. He's an associate professor of OBGYN at the University of Colorado Health Sciences Center. He's the director of the residency program of the OBGYN program at the University of Colorado. And he's also the director of the Assisted Reproductive Technologies Department at the University of Colorado. Dr. Alvaro?
Thank you very much, Crystal. Good morning. As Crystal said, my name is Ruben Alvaro. I am an obstetrician gynecologist, and I'm certified in both OBGYN and infertility. And my special focus in my daily practice is infertility. As a faculty member at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, but I'm not speaking to you in that capacity today. I'm in fact taking a day off. I'm taking a day of leave today in order to be able to speak, and my opinions don't necessarily reflect the opinions of the University of Colorado. There, I said it. As an OBGYN, my specialty is helping infertile couples begin their pregnancies. Too many people think that Amendment 48 is only about abortion or banning abortion. In fact, its far-reaching consequences could hurt those families who are desperately trying to get pregnant. When patients come to see me, they are often desperate and have been trying to achieve a pregnancy for a very long time. Having a family and raising children is a fundamental human drive, and intruding into this process obviously impacts important life decisions. It is not widely appreciated, but about 15% of reproductive age couples suffer from infertility. Treatments for infertility are so prevalent that today 1% of all babies born in the United States are born from IVF cycles. So it's an extremely prevalent process that is ongoing on a daily basis. Treatments for infertility range from very simple to very complex, but as a physician and advocate for my patients, I fear that Amendment 48 could have a dramatic impact on my ability to care for my patients, regardless of the type of treatment that I use. Many studies have shown that infertile couples suffer emotional trauma that is similar to losing a close family member from their infertility. In my practice as a physician, I help patients achieve their dreams and heal these wounds, and I fear that Amendment 48 could intrude into this very personal, private relationship that I build with my patients. This is in theory, but let me personalize a little bit and give you a specific example. Let's take a young couple who have unexplained infertility. We don't know why they're not getting pregnant, since all their studies have come back normal. It certainly isn't a fault of theirs that they're not getting pregnant. But early in their treatments, we can try to optimize their fertility by using intrauterine inseminations and fertility drugs, and sometimes this works, but more than half the time it does not work. When these simple treatments don't work, it is time to use the more complex and highly effective technique known as in vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization works by increasing the number of fertilized eggs that a woman has. We give the patient fertility drugs, increase the number of eggs that a woman has, retrieve these eggs, and then fertilize them in the laboratory with the husband's sperm. We are then able to select the very best ones and replace those in the woman's uterus, thereby having a greater than 50% chance of achieving a pregnancy if we take the patient through this process. So it's a very effective process in these patients that have so far shown an inability to become pregnant with simpler methods. Just like in natural cycles, or as I call it, fertilization the old-fashioned way, not all fertilized eggs are capable of implanting and or delivering 9 months later and becoming a breathing, walking, talking human being. Many, if not most, fertilized eggs grow to a certain point and then they just stop developing. They don't go any further. They don't have any further capacity for growth. They do not, in the laboratory, we have to deal with these fertilized eggs. With the couple's permission, we discard these fertilized eggs since they do not have the potential to develop into a human being. Amendment 48 grants these fertilized eggs with no capacity for development the same constitutional rights as a young woman, as a grandfather, as a young man, as a living, breathing human being. And IVF is not a rare occurrence. In 2006, the last year for which we have a lot of data, there were over 130,000 cycles of IVF practiced in the United States. Those of us who practice in this field fear the legal status given fertilized eggs that have no capacity for development. Can we properly discard them? Are we going to be charged with murder for doing so? Fertility treatments would come to a screeching halt if wherever this law was adopted. Amendment 48, if passed, would hurt many, many couples. So therefore, Amendment 48 has many far-reaching consequences on important life decisions. My patients, along with many other couples, won't be able to begin their families without assisted reproductive technologies. This amendment could ban these treatment options and hurt these families. So it is my strong urging that Colorado vote no on Amendment 48 because it's bad medicine, it's really bad science, and it really goes too far. Thank you very much.
A woman should have the right to make decisions about her own health care with her doctor and family without government intrusion. We need to protect the sanctity and privacy of the doctor-patient relationship. So we thank you for participating in today's panel. And I'd like to select a few people to answer questions, or ask questions, rather, if you've got them. So if you would raise your hand, I'd love to call on you. Anyone? Yes.
How much support does this have in Colorado with elected officials? Have a number of candidates or people already in office come out with support and backing for it?
So the question is, how much political support does this amendment have in Colorado? And I have two ways of answering that question for you. The first is you should check out the campaign's website at www.protectfamiliesprotectchoices.org, and you can see the list of organizations and individuals who are opposing Amendment 48. Here in Colorado, we find that this amendment initially really concerns a number of people. And so on the one hand, we feel like there is a natural base of opposition that we can invest in and grow if we have the resources to mount an effective campaign. On the other hand, Focus on the Family recently came out in support of Amendment 48. The proponents of Amendment 48 have backing from national organizations like the Thomas More Law Center, like the American Life League, which is an organization behind the Pills campaign. And so we really feel like they also have substantial opportunity to mount an effective campaign. Thanks.
Forgive me, but I'm a little troubled by the idea of it goes too far, as if there is some distance that would be acceptable. I don't think there's any acceptable distance in which a woman's right to choose should be interfered with. So I'm just curious about the basis for saying it goes too far, because it shouldn't say anything about distance at all, because there shouldn't be any discussion whatsoever about interfering with that person's individual choice.
One of the things that I do and that we all do is respect, say the Colorado Medical Society, American College of OBGYN. We all respect individual members to have their own personal beliefs about abortion and stem cell research. And so it is very easy for me in talking to physician groups to really, abortion and stem cell research are really separate issues. Amendment 48 deals with so many other issues, and it establishes the practice of medicine through the Constitution. So I see your point, but this is a coalition, and in terms of building that coalition, we can have members who are anti-abortion and still view this amendment as wrong and in opposition to it.
I certainly respect the doctor's position. I understand, and that it is the nature of a broad-based coalition. But I think your point is so well taken, because obviously this illustrates the danger and the slippery slope of once you let government, politicians, bureaucrats, judges decide what's best for health care for women and for families, this is exactly what you get. So where do you draw the line? And I think that we all agree that the decisions that families and women make about bearing children, and you've heard eloquent stories here from our doctors about the very personal, private, and difficult decisions that families make about having children, about not having children. Government simply has no role in making those decisions, and I think this is a very good example of
Just to build on what Cecile just said about politicians, government not being involved, but let's be clear. This is a stealth way of having the public just think, well, what's wrong with something like 48? Part of the job of the coalition and part of the job of those of us that live and breathe and walk and talk this every day is to educate the public. You've got to go where they are, and you've got to bring them along to understand the danger of an initiative like this. Do not assume that the American public, the Colorado voters, just immediately go, oh yeah, that's bad, and we should keep politicians out of it. They look at the face of it and say, yeah, not so bad. But they have to be educated, and that's part of the job of going where people are, bringing them along about the danger of this on so many fronts, and then getting them to realize in their own kind of place that they should vote no on 48.
Hi, I'm Kristen Amond, board member of Planned Parenthood in Kansas and in Missouri. Hi, Cecile. And I have a question. A lot of times the legislation that is created is replicated in other states, and we are the most attacked board affiliate in the history of Planned Parenthood, and I could just see this coming to Kansas City. Is there any knowledge of this being replicated in other states that we have to be aware of and have to start preventative action now? Thank you.
I think that's kind of what, and thank you for being here from Kansas, which is a state where there has been more litigation and more direct attacks on women's health care access than probably any place in the country. But I think your point is exactly well made, and why I think the way this campaign and the education that Nancy's talking about is so important, because there is no reason to think that Focus on the Family or the American Life League is only interested in what happens in the state of Colorado. They're using Colorado, just like they're using South Dakota now, as really a test bed for some extremely bad ideas and extremely bad legislation. So I think how this campaign develops and how we are able collectively as medical providers, as healthcare providers, as advocates, to explain exactly for families and women what this would mean is extremely important, because we're going to be having to have this same conversation all around the country. And I just want to make one other point, I guess sort of related to that and related to the earlier point. It wasn't until the Terry Schiavo case, to Nancy's point, the American people, this is not what they're focused on, right? This is the work of some extreme right-wing folks who want to, put stuff on the ballot. The American people are busy living their lives, and it wasn't really, I think, until the Terry Schiavo case that folks in America saw firsthand what it looked like when you let people in government, United States senators who had no relationship to a family, begin to interfere and make decisions in the most personal and private decisions that a family could make. I think that case and these kind of examples of to really bring folks along to understand what's at stake once we begin to let government meddle in very personal private decisions.
And I know that Nancy has a response.
Just the other place, it was in Montana, and it was also put forth to be on the ballot. The folks in Montana, the Coalition Montana, were able to have a decline to sign campaign. So they were able to keep it off the ballot in Montana by really pushing forward early on to decline to sign. But I think you're going to see this not only here, you are going to see it popping up all over the country. So we're preparing for that.
Hi, my name is Susan Shelton. I'm from Austin, Texas. Hi, Susan. One of the things you had mentioned is that your intent is to try to educate the public about what's going on in these stealth campaigns. So I'd like, if you could, to offer some suggestions to us as bloggers, as sort of an alternative media situation. How can we help bring that forward? How can we assist in any way possible?
There are several things. I think the importance of blogging on this issue is critical and broader than we often find that particularly women bloggers take this issue of reproductive choice up and are the ones that are pushing it forward. I would encourage you to talk to your colleagues across the blogger community that this affects all of our lives, that it affects men as much as women. This is not a women's only issue. This is a family issue. This is about government not being involved in our private decision making. And so absolutely bloggers have to be out there. The other thing is that I'll tell you, you wear stickers, as silly as that sounds sometimes, and you're walking around Austin, Texas, or you're walking around in Denver, Colorado, people say, what's No on 48? That's the education process that you can do as individuals. And then again, as the coalition, whether we're talking to voters out there, whether it is providing the kind of information that's on paper, whether it's running the ads and putting more on the blogs, it is important that people understand this is not just a reproductive issue. It is about how it affects families, men and women, and how the role of government in our lives. And I will just echo Cecile's comment about Terri Schiavo. We felt this nation come to a halting stop when Americans watched that tragedy play out on TV. And all we have to do is also connect. Is that the kind of government you want in your lives? Because most people went, whoa, for the grace of God, that could be my family. And that's when they realized there is a connection between reproductive rights, personal rights, privacy, freedom, was when they watched that play out on TV. And it's something that we all have to talk about.
Unfortunately, our time here with you as a panel has come to an end. I would like to just end with a couple of thoughts. First, Amendment 48 really is an example of how all across the country folks are working every single day to protect access to reproductive health care. And we have to protect that access because important life decisions that should be made by individuals, their doctors, and their families are instead being taken over by extremists. So far in this conversation, we haven't mentioned this, but our effort to defeat Amendment 48 will also be very expensive. And to the extent that you're able, and to the extent that you have an audience, if you will please direct them to the Protect Families, Protect Choices.org website and help us raise the $3 million this campaign would take. We appreciate it. Thank you.